raise people's cost of living. They go to the grocery store and they're reminded every week that you failed. They go buy gasoline and reminded you failed. They live in a neighborhood that is dangerous and people get shot. They realize that there are millions and millions of illegal immigrants who are now both in some cases physically dangerous and in other cases are going to take your job. And the party that's doing all that to you is saying, well, you should blindly vote for us anyway.
All right, guys, good Friday to you. We're heading into a weekend. When we come out, we will be in single digits till the election. And as a reminder, big election night planned for you. Live show. Not just our show will happen as normal, and then we'll go 4 hours, 8 to 12. Hit that notification button because you want to sign up. Be with us. We've got a huge studio. We're going to have in-studio guests. It's going to be awesome. Roger Stone, Newt Gingrich are here with us today. By the way, real quick, you watched the 270 show, right? And you think you know everything now. If you are someone that wants to put that to work, guess what? You can now bet on the election. If you think you can win, how many seats the Dems are going to pick up in the House and the Senate and who's going to win the president, there's finally a legal way to bet on the outcome of the election. It's a platform called Kalshi. Kalshi, Kalshi. It was created by 2 MIT engineers, and it's the first legal exchange where you can trade or bet on any event, including elections. It went to court and it won legal approval for election betting the first time in over 100 years. They have markets on everything. Who's going to win this? Who's going to win that? Who's going to control the House and the Senate? Who's going to win swing states? It's already been being used by hundreds of thousands of people. So if you think you know who's going to win, Trump or Kamala, and if you watch 270 to win, then you know Trump's going to win. I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but so put your money where your mouth and your lawn sign are. Give Kalshi a try. Sign up using my link. Here's the cool part. You're going to get something out of this. Go to Kalshi, KALSHI.com/Spicer. Kalshi.com/Spicer. The first 500 traders, if you deposit $100, you get 20. Where else are you getting a 20% return on your investment? Go to Kalshi.com. The first 500 are getting on a $100 deposit are getting $20. Not a bad deal in the Biden economy, huh? All right. Roger Stone's going to come up. I think this is really cool because we can talk about where, Kamala was all about vibes and joy. Not so much anymore. They are on defense heading into these final 2 weeks. Let's talk to Roger. Before I do that, though, I got another great guy I want to tell you about. If you've listened before, you know who I'm talking about. It is my friend, Leo Grillo. Leo is an animal lover. Lots of talks about eating cats and dogs. Not so much with Leo Grillo. He's a good guy. He saves cats and dogs. He rescues them. He rescued his first animal, a Doberman, a dog, named him Delta, and then thought, hey, I can do a lot more. And he founded Delta Rescue. If you go to deltarescue.org, you hear me talk about these videos. It's amazing. It's not a shelter. It's a no-kill sanctuary for life. These animals that are abused, abandoned, malnutrition, Leo and the folks at Delta Rescue take care of them for life. They're not looking like it's not a way station or they're trying to find a home or get them adopted. This is so cool what they do at Delta Rescue. If you go to deltarescue.org, you'll see what I'm talking about. They're called, it's amazing. We call dogs man's best friend for a reason. You can help the people who are helping these animals. Go make a contribution at deltarescue.org. But please go to the estate planning kit. And like I said, go to it, it's in that top tab. It says estate planning. Download it. Think about it and pray on it. Consider it. That's all I ask you to do, because if you're a dog lover, an animal lover, if you've rescued animals, the work that Leo Grillo and the folks at Delta Rescue are doing should be something that endures for generations and decades. So just consider it. You might even have a tax benefit if you talk to your estate planning person or your financial advisor. So go to deltarescue.org, look at that estate planning kit at that top tab. Just think about it, pray on it, consider it. Thank you for your consideration. All right, without further ado, Roger Stone. Hey, Roger, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Sean, great to be here.
Let's talk about where we are, though. 22 days out from the election. The dynamic, in my mind, has vastly shifted. Coming out of the convention, it was all joy and vibes, according to the Democrats. And then I believe that Democrats kept waiting for Kamala Harris to give them a reason. And they finally said, okay, there's no there there. And now you're seeing this shift. The CARES campaign is on defense this last 22 days. And Donald Trump has retaken the wave of enthusiasm and excitement heading into the final 3 weeks of this election.
Sean, I totally agree with your analysis. Really, what they were trying to do was to copy the Obama campaign, where he offered us hope and change, but no specifics. So it was a vibe he was selling. And after the Bush presidency, perhaps they thought that would work, and it did. So I guess they thought they could sell us joy without any specifics. The problem is that voters are now beginning to focus on the real Kamala Harris, and they find her vacuous. They start to look at her positions. Yeah, she wanted to defund the police. She wanted to make entering the country illegally no longer a crime. She wanted you and I and every American taxpayer to pay for the health care for the, what is it, 20 million people who have entered the country illegally. We did that. We wouldn't be able to pay for health care for anyone. So I think people are beginning to focus on the fact that she doesn't have the qualifications, the intelligence, or any plan whatsoever, other than what she unbelievably admitted this past week is she would do nothing whatsoever different than Joe Biden. So
Don't
how
you
is
find
that? How is she a change agent?
Don't you find that mind blowing? That I cannot believe, as a former staffer, that you send your boss out and the most fundamental question is, what would you do differently? How do you answer for the last 4 years? And you can't name a single thing. I found it a dereliction of duty on behalf of her staff to not have an answer ready to go. She does a media tour that's supposed to move the needle forward. And yet, to your point, all we're talking about is the flubs.
Yeah, I think they got two different problems. One, I think the president in the debate, when he said, "Let me tell you folks a secret, Joe Biden hates her," I think he's absolutely right. So Biden now is a loose cannon. Be very careful what they say about him, because he's very bitter about the way he was pushed aside by Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and the fact that he got 17 million votes. He got 71% of the vote in the Democrat primaries and caucuses, and nobody voted for her. So they're trying to minimize any damage that Biden can do to them in the final days. We've already seen him, as you know, rush to the press room in the White House, where he's never been, not even once during his presidency, to beat her to the punch in announcing the end of the longshoremen's strike. When she tried to call Governor DeSantis to talk about the hurricane relief, he wouldn't return her call. And when asked why, he said, "Well, I'm dealing with the president of the United States. Why should I deal with her?" And then Biden said, "I've been talking to the governor. He's doing a great job." So that's once again undercutting Kamala. I'm not sure he wants her in his lucid moments. I'm not sure that he wants her to win.
I agree. There's something about, he stepped on her press conference the other day. I think he wants to show, see, it wasn't me, right? Because if she wins, it proves the narrative that he just needed to get out of the way. If she loses, he can say, see, it wasn't me. It's all of us.
Well, in that performance on, I think it was The View, when he's asked why he didn't run again, he kind of looks at the floor. He seems uncomfortable. And he said, my poll numbers were every bit as good as hers are today. I thought I could beat the guy, meaning Trump. My poll numbers were no worse than theirs, but some in the party, thought I should get out, weren't sure I could win, and maybe it was time to make room for younger people. I still think he's rightfully very bitter. They pushed him aside. They did so in a brutal manner. They embarrassed him. I'm not sure he wants her to win. He's a loose cannon here in the last 20 some odd days.
Yeah, not only that, they treated him horribly, but then they haven't even tried to show him any, modicum of respect since then. They've literally been like, you don't need to show up anywhere. We got this. And I think that he felt like he got pushed aside, to your point, and then he's been treated very badly since then. You would think that someone would say, hey, thanks for doing this. We want to respect your decision and what you've done for the party, and we're going to highlight your service and make you seem like the elder statesman that you want to be. Instead, it's, hey, Joe, stay in the corner. We're going to put you there, and we'll bring you out after the election for maybe a victory lap.
Sean, can you imagine having the sitting president of the United States have his final convention speech to a Democrat National Convention, speaking after midnight on Monday night, and then telling him to get out of town so he's not even there for the nomination of his successor?
It
No
was
former
rude.
president has been treated like that. And let's point out who is not campaigning for Kamala. That would be Jill Biden. Jill has, I'm told, declined any request. So they roll out Barack Obama last week. That was a disaster because all he does is engage in race baiting, telling people, well, if you're black, you have to vote for her. Why? A, she's not black, and B, black men can think for themselves. They don't need Barack Obama to tell them how to vote. I thought that was a gigantic mistake. I don't think they'll take Hillary Clinton out on the campaign trail. If they do, they're going to find out that she continues to be one of the most hated people in the entire country.
It is interesting. I'm glad you brought up the Jill Biden thing. She's so bitter, and you're right about this combination. They are mad at her. And if Jill Biden really cared about her husband's legacy, she'd be out there saying, we need to vote for the first woman. We need to do this, say a lot of the things that Kamala can't. But Gavin Newsom, where's he been? Where's Gretchen? I mean, aside, I want to talk about the Gretchen Whitmer thing, but actually, let's just do it now. Gretchen Whitmer, and I know that you're a convert to Catholicism, the ad that Gretchen Whitmer did for her, and I'll just show it to the audience now. I mean, this is disgusting, Roger. I don't know. I can't. I feel like every time I get outraged, someone says to me, really, you now that you draw the line? But this is absolutely appalling to every Catholic, the way that they have dealt with the Holy Eucharist. And yet the media just allowed that to go. The Kamala Harris campaign didn't have to answer it. And you have Gretchen Whitmer handing a Dorito to some leftist feminist from Canada in this in sort of a depiction of the Eucharist. And I cannot believe there was no more outrage on this.
Yeah, I saw it. I showed it to my wife last night. It's really, really offensive. It's unbelievably offensive. But look, these people, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in organized religion. They don't respect our belief in God. So I guess they thought this was clever or funny, or this would somehow get them votes. I don't quite get it. But remember, these are the same people who think the endorsement of Dick Cheney, a man who lied our way into war, who claimed that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction, who claimed that Iraq was involved in 9/11, which of course they weren't. They seem to think that his endorsement, because he's a Republican, shows bipartisan support. I think it is a bad misreading of the country. Sean, the most exciting thing that's going on right now, I think, in politics is the realignment in which common sense Democrats and independents like Robert Kennedy, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Rod Blagojevich, they're supporting Donald Trump because it is a throwback to the old Democrat Party that believed in capitalism, free enterprise, a strong national defense, a party that was fundamentally patriotic. Yeah, that maybe the Democrats wanted to spend more and tax more than we did, but they still believed in America. That Democrat Party simply no longer exists. The party has been taken captive by a group of Marxists and other screwballs. So there is a realignment going on. As far as I'm concerned, they can have the warmongers. I'd rather have the Justice League, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert Kennedy, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson. That's the camp I'm in.
I did get a kick out of the fact that when Liz Cheney endorsed her, Kamala Harris looked at her and said, I'm honored to have your endorsement. And I looked at somebody that I know and I said, so tell me 2 years ago that Kamala Harris would have ever said that about a Cheney. They used to, talk about how these people, the Cheneys, were the worst possible people and they were warmongers, as you mentioned. They were right-wing nut jobs. And now suddenly they're honored to have their endorsement. I mean, I just don't know who they think that they're helping when they say that.
I think they're seeing things in old terms. In other words,
Yes.
They see it as bipartisan support. Oh, look, we have these Republicans. Republican Democrat is not how the country breaks down anymore. Today, it's about those who are in and an outsider. Donald Trump is an outsider. Even though he served 4 terms 4 years as president, he remained an outsider. And it is his outsider agenda You know him well, Sean. He can't be bullied. He can't be bossed. No one tells him what to think. No one tells him where to go. No one tells him what to do. He's fiercely independent. He's genuine. He's authentic. That's why he got elected. That's what people want. Partisanship, I think, is behind us. We're in a post-partisan political period. People don't decide by Republican, Democrat. I mean, obviously some do, but most people are voting for the policies and the person. And this is where I think Donald Trump shines. Anyone who looks at Kamala Harris will determine she's literally unqualified to be president. And when you begin to look at some of her decisions, her record, for example, as a prosecutor, her prosecution of this woman, Shari Peoples, whose daughter was missing from school because she had sickle cell anemia, and at 12 years old, she had a debilitating stroke. Yet, despite the fact that Shari Peoples, the black mother who was innocent, provided all this documentation to the schools, Kamala Harris still wanted to put her in jail because her sick daughter was in the hospital and therefore not able to go to public school.
Yeah, they went after her for truancy, as if she was hanging out on a street corner. She had health care issues. The mother was bending over backwards to care for her, and they go after her for her daughter's, quote, truancy. And I'm thinking to myself, that shows, I mean, who in their right mind, regardless of party, does that to another person? And that was a badge of honor for Kamala Harris. No wonder people worry about her judgment.
Well, she actually used it, as a centerpiece of her campaign for attorney general. So she destroyed the life of this black woman and her daughter, and they're still struggling for political gain to try to make an issue out of it. Then later, she does an interview with on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and he says, "Well, did anybody actually go to jail?" She says, "No, nobody did." Well, this woman did go to jail. It is really disgraceful.
I want to get back to where we are 22 days out. She's got this problem with black men, and she's going on she went on Roland Martin's show. She's going on these other podcasts and shows catering to black men. She's rolling out an agenda for them, talking about some of the healthcare issues that are unique to black men that she'll address. She's talking about small business loans with $20,000 forgivable. It blows my mind that we're 22 days out of an election, and it's the Democrats with a black candidate that are trying to figure out how to get to black men, and that they are coming to Donald Trump, who the Democrats paint as this racist, horrible person. And the Democrats, have to admit they have a big problem with this demographic that has been so on their side since Nixon.
I mean, the bottom line is this. At this particular hour, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance with black voters since Richard Nixon back in 1960. Not 68, since 1960. That's 64 years ago. Among Hispanic voters, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance for Republicans since 2004 and George W. Bush.
It's very interesting. In 1960, Nixon got literally a third of the African-American vote. And that's running against John F. Kennedy. It now appears that Donald Trump is poised to perform as well, if not slightly better. That's really historic. Also true, as you know, is we're actually could get an absolute majority of Hispanic voters. The previous high water mark there for a Republican was under George W. Bush. I think it was around 38%, which at the time we thought was really great. Right. So if they have to worry about their base, that tells you a lot about what's going to happen in this election. I think.
Doesn't that also tell you a lot about what's going on, though, in the media? That there's this perception, whether it's Hispanics, as you mentioned, or black, we have to cater to them. And if a candidate, I saw it yesterday, Kristen Welker, what are you doing to get to them? And this goes back to, I think, the difference between how we communicate. You and I think, agree that we talk about values to Americans, all Americans, and say we're going to make this country better, safer, more prosperous. The way that the media and the Democrats believe is that we got to give you something. We've got to give you something to make you vote for us. It's got to be transactional, as opposed to saying we want your life to be better and we'll implement policies that will make it safer and more prosperous for everybody, allow you to compete.
Yeah, I completely agree. Why do we think that black voters don't want what all voters want? Economic opportunity, safe neighborhoods, better schools, affordable housing. This idea that we have to come up with some gimmick to pay you off. By the way, we'll give you $25,000 to buy a house, regardless of your ability to service a mortgage in the future. We tried that under Bill Clinton. Remember?
Yep.
Andrew Cuomo was the Secretary of HUD. It was called the subprime mortgage disaster. It not only destroyed the housing industry, it caused an entire economic meltdown. So we tried that and it didn't work. But it is the Democrat playbook. You're absolutely right to try to buy these votes with a program or a grant or funding. I don't think it will work.
So I want to ask you about something that I is a pet peeve of mine. The Democrats argue that people who enter this country illegally, i.e. break a law to come into the country, and then we give them a free driver's license, that those folks will stop at the line of registering to vote because, well, that's illegal. So you'll break the law to come into this country. We give you a free driver's license, but then, God forbid, you won't vote because, well, that's illegal. Well, then Glenn Youngkin and other folks, but Glenn Youngkin, my governor here in Virginia, cleans up the voter rolls and says these non-citizens need to be taken off the voter laws. And the Biden DOJ sues Virginia. Now, what other conclusion could you possibly come to at this point to say that the Democrats truly want you to vote?
Yeah, I talked to a lawyer I know about this last night because I'm not a lawyer. I can't understand even what argument they could make. The Constitution is clear. The state laws are clear. You have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. So what is their argument that you should not remove these non-citizens from the voting rolls? It's hard for me to even imagine what argument they make. But as you know, they've gone to court in multiple states, I think Arizona as well, to fight people who are not eligible to vote based on their citizenship from being on the rolls. When I said this in a speech in Jacksonville the other day, that I thought there were at least a million ineligible voters, people who are dead, people who moved, people who are not citizens, people who never existed at all that needed to be cleaned from the rolls. I was attacked for planning to stage a coup. That's how crazy these people are. No, the only people who should vote are people who are legally eligible to vote. I give Glenn Youngkin huge credit for making this move. We need to have a free, fair, honest, transparent election. If we do, I think Donald Trump will win.
But don't you agree? I mean, my position is if you put up all these roadblocks to ensuring that only U.S. citizens do vote, then one needs to question your motives. If you keep telling me that you want to give them a free driver's license, that you don't want us to clean up voter rolls, then it's got to be that your intention is that they actually do vote.
I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Democrats want illegals to vote. Here in Florida, you can go to the motor vehicles department and register to vote. No one asks you for proof of citizenship. No one asks you to prove that you're actually eligible, and you go on the voter rolls. And that's the largest single source of new registrants in the state. So I think we have to conclude, as you say, the Democrats want illegals to vote because they think they will vote for the folks who let them in the country illegally and who are giving them, in New York State, for example, a prepackaged credit card, a cell phone, a place to live. I mean, American citizens, particularly seniors and veterans, have been thrown out of housing in New York so that we can house illegals. None of this makes any sense.
Great conversation with Roger. So excited to now have a conversation with Newt Gingrich, because here's a guy who knows what it's like to bring in a wave, set an agenda for it. I think that's what the Trump second term agenda is all about. Before we do that, though, the calendar just passed October 15th. That's when I filed my taxes. I got them done on time, but some people missed the deadline. And if you miss that October 15th deadline, or if you still owe money, that's a red flag for the IRS. They can garnish your wages. They can seize property. They can do all sorts of bad things. The IRS is not a group that you want to go up against. And the reason that I love our sponsor, Tax Network, is that they've recovered over $1 billion for their clients. These guys know how to get results. They mean business too. If you're going to go up against the IRS, have some professional help. And these guys are the best in the business. They know what they're talking about. If you get a letter, a call, a visit from the IRS, do not, under any circumstance, try to take them on yourself. Call my friends at Tax Network USA, tnusa.com, tnusa.com, but you got to use the full name /Sean Spicer, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Speak to them about your needs. How much do you owe? Is it business? It's personal. It doesn't matter. They've got the experience and the professionalism to make it all happen. All right. Without further ado, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be with you. It's a lot of fun.
So we're here, final 21 days. Maybe it's me, so I want a gut check on this. But I feel like she's desperate. Kamala Harris, that is. She last night started talking about Trump being unhinged, and she's now saying, I'll go on Joe Rogan. It's sort of like they're acknowledging we'll throw everything against the wall. We've got to figure out what will stick because nothing else has.
Well, I think if you were in her shoes and you had magically appeared as the nominee without doing anything, and here you are either at the beginning of a great future career or being a person who blew it, I think the tension would get to you. And I think in her case, she has this huge problem in that all of her advisors think she has to go out and perform. And unless we're totally misinformed, she can't perform. I mean, putting her on Joe Rogan, even putting her on Brett Baer, is a high risk opportunity. You know, when you watched last Saturday Night Live, and you watched the degree to which they were ridiculing her, that's a really bad sign if you're a liberal Democrat.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if you're getting mocked by The View and Saturday Night Live, you've got a problem. But the question I would have for you is someone who kind of oversaw a lot of House Republicans and their efforts. If someone came to you 21 days out and said, Mr. Speaker, things aren't working, I'm just going to throw everything at the wall, do you go, you got nothing else to lose, you might as well? Or do you try to install some level of discipline and strategy? I mean, what's the advice that you give right now? Because I feel like she's saying, I don't care anymore. We just got to do something.
Well, I think you're conflating two different things. One is her schedule, and the other is her message. The schedule is clearly a function of panic. I mean, you don't start talking about going on Joe Rogan as a liberal Democrat unless you're like just bananas. Her deeper, and if somebody came to me, and this has happened obviously, if somebody came to me, I'd say, all right, tell me your 3 best winning arguments. Stick to them. Stick to them all day, every day. Haley Barbour used to say, about the time you can't stand saying it, the average voter is starting to hear it. And so she's got to figure out, this happened to me. I'd lost twice. My third race was very complicated. And on Labor Day, after 5 years of campaigning, I was behind a multimillionaire Democrat state senator, 51-37. And my consultant came in, Bob Weed, and said, we have 2 issues that'll beat her. And we have just enough money to run these 2 issues. We don't have the money to run more than 2. And you got to decide. After 5 years, you're willing to gamble your future on being very disciplined, sticking to 2 issues. And your job is to be nice. And we have ads that will basically take her apart. And then your job is to be pleasant with the press because she'll go crazy. I spent the last 6 weeks of the campaign a very calm, very disciplined approach. Debated her one time, stuck to exactly the same issues. She actually attacked me and said that my ads were political pornography. And the press, of course, came running over gleefully and said, what do you think of that? And I said, well, since the ads are about her record, I've never before heard a candidate describe her record as pornographic, but we'd have to go ask her why does she think her record is pornographic. I mean, it was that sort of thing, but it required, and I ended up, by the way, going from down 51-37 to winning 54-46. So I would start by saying, tell me what you think your 3 winning issues are. I think they have to be 3 to avoid boredom. I don't think they can be more than 3, because even at the presidential level, you can't communicate more than 3 issues in the last 3 weeks of the campaign. And I'd be very curious, other than abortion, if they think they have any issue that works for them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is that I feel like that's why I used the word desperate a moment ago, because I feel like they've tried the economy, they've tried policies, the other day she started talking about medical records, and I'm like, are you really want to go there? You guys were complicit in covering up Joe Biden, and now you want to talk about medical records? So last night it was he's unhinged. I feel like, to your point, find something that works. They have a ton of money. They have a ton of data and a ton of analytics. They've got to know that something moves the needle. And this morning on the morning meeting that we host with Mark Halpern and Dan Turntine, we were questioning, is this the new message? And I said, well, look, we can need 72 hours. Is this the message of the day, or is this the message they're going to stick with? But I can't, for the life of me, as someone on the other side, tell someone, what is it Kamala Harris is campaigning on? Is she saying she can make things better, that she's smarter, that she's got a new way policy-wise, that Trump's unhinged, that he's a threat to democracy? So, every day I feel like they're auditioning a new message. Do you have any sense of what it is they're trying to get through? And I get we're not in the business of helping them, but I don't know what her message is.
Look, I mean, let's start with part one. They clearly had decided from day one that they wanted the issue to be Donald Trump as a person. So they have been consistently, whether it's talking about January 6th or it's talking about his personality, you name it, they have gone after him as a person over and over and over. Now, the Trump people, to their credit, have mostly gone after her on issues. I mean, their thematic basically is that she's weak, liberal, and dangerous, and that really relates back to being a left-winger. And they understand that the three key issues, from their perspective, are in the economy and particularly inflation, the border and the criminal gangs, and then crime. And that on those three issues, they win by a big margin. So at a level of discipline we hadn't seen there for a while, Trump's been pretty good the last couple of weeks, sticking with the things that work for him. Meanwhile, I think the big problem for her is that she's inherently funny. And I mean funny in the sense of weird. And, I think last night's contribution was talking, which I still don't understand, was answering a question by talking about the stars in the sky and the constellations they make, and how if you rethink it, the constellations can become different.
There's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation, what does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
I mean, I'm watching this thing thinking, where is she going? And I think she is thinking, where am I going? It's just weird. I mean, every other day you get sort of, so somebody pointed out, it may have been Jesse Waters, did this thing about what was her word of the day. And I think the word of the day that yesterday was safe. And he had this answer by her, which used safe like 5 times. And when you are easy to ridicule and caricature, you carry a huge burden, and you'd better find an issue or a topic so powerful that people will overlook the fact that you're weird. And they haven't found that. I mean, I think they objectively can't figure out, other than abortion, they cannot figure out what to hit Trump on.
I also think that there's a degree, and you mentioned the 3 issues that Trump's campaigning on, and I get you can't get too many or it overwhelms people's sensory overload here. But I feel like there's an authenticity issue with both her and Walz. Walz tries to go hunting this weekend. He claims that he's a hunter that always had a gun in the car, and yet he couldn't load the gun. And I think it showed, right? On the video, everybody who ever has hunted was like, dude, this is pathetic. She doesn't come off as authentic. She comes off as, she has an accent for every group that she meets with. I do believe that voters who were willing to give her a chance because they didn't know her, they didn't know anything about her, were willing to give her a chance. But there's a degree of they're not authentic. They're not who they say they were. They'll flip-flop. They'll be who you are. Is that worth pursuing, or is it, hey, you've got bigger fish to fry issue-wise?
Well, I mean, I don't think Trump has to do it. I think the media is doing it. The public is doing it. I have several friends who send me random TV commercials that are made by people that just show up. I mean, we live in an age of extraordinarily diffused creativity where people have tools, as you know, they're off the shelf, available, downloadable. And so you have a country talking to itself. And it's a little bit like what happened to Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford had been a very good football player on a very successful University of Michigan team. It became a thematic that he was clumsy. And Chevy Chase made his career in part by stumbling around as Jerry Ford on Saturday Night Live. Now, the fact is, Ford wasn't particularly clumsy. He was a very good athlete. But once it set in, it was just one more piece of weakening Ford in the general election. I think that Kamala's problem is that it's a little bit like the other night when they had the Saturday Night Live skit, and they asked the question, and she immediately says, "Well, you do know," and I think, by the way, that the actress who plays her is a genius.
Maya Rudolph.
And she was a genius in Bridesmaids, so I'm totally for her. But anyway, which, by the way, was the movie I used for debate prep before the first Fox debate in 2012. But
by the way, that's going to go down as like Gingrich trivia question. What was the movie that Newt Gingrich used before? I would have never guessed that one.
Well, so Clifton and I just stayed in our room and we drank Diet Coke and watched Bridesmaids. Because I think the most important thing about a debate is being relaxed. I mean, if you haven't already prepared, you had Romney down the hall with 12 binders to read. If you haven't already prepared, you shouldn't be on the stage, is my theory of life.
Yep.
Which is also the Trump theory, which is why trying to prepare him for a debate is an oxymoron. I mean, he spends 24 hours a day preparing for a debate. He just hopes one will show up. But when you watched the other night, though, she gets asked this question. I think they're playing one of the TV games.
Family
She
Feud.
gets asked a question, and she starts by saying, "Well, I was raised in a middle class neighborhood, and she goes off the whole thing." Well, the fact that that's now a thing is not good. I mean, it's the sort of thing that makes you shrug her off. And then when she tries to say something serious, you're remembering this is a person who talks in weird ways that don't make any sense. And I think it dramatically undercuts her candidacy.
Yeah, well, the narrative is set in. I want to ask you about her constituencies, because it blows my mind that she's on Charlemagne the God tonight. He's a big radio host on iHeart, huge audience with the Black community. She's now talking about giving Black men $1 million small business loans forgivable up to $20,000, providing training and mentorship programs, focusing on health issues that disproportionately affect Black men. I mean, I feel like if you're 21 days out and you have a problem with this constituency that is core to every Democrat, and you yourself are Black, that's a problem.
Well, Black and I think South Asian. I mean, let's be fair. But I have two thoughts about this. I'm actually writing a piece about Barack Obama as a racist, because his comments the other night were pure racism, where he's lecturing young Black men that they have an obligation to be for her. Why do they have an obligation to be for her? Because she's Black. Well, that is a straight out.
That's very Biden, right? You ain't Black if you're voting for me.
That's right. And of course, in Obama's case, it was lovely of him to leave his 8-bedroom mansion and briefly go to Pittsburgh long enough to lecture people before going back to an island, by the way, whose Black population is 3%. And the average home is worth almost $1 million. So I think it's $942,000 on the average home. His compound, of course, is vastly bigger and more expensive. But what I've asked Rachel Peterson, who does just an amazing job of research for me, to track down the exact statements by Harris, because if she's talking about a $20,000 forgivable loan, which of course means it's just a gift,
right?
It's not a loan at all. If she's talking about that only for Black men as part of her Black male appeal, I mean, that's a purely racist program. And one would think that it would be illegal in the United States to have a purely racist program. Furthermore, how black do you have to be to qualify? This is the whole reparations problem.
Right.
And how do we know it won't end up in fraud? I mean, you go down.
Well, also, I mean, just on a policy standpoint, it's stupid too. You're just going to everyone will then adjust their cost to assume that you can afford another 20 grand. I mean, policy wise, just on its face, it's a dumb policy.
Well, it also means everybody in their who's semi-competent is going to open up a website, claim they're a business, and ask for the 20 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's the sort of thing that happens when you have really clever, smart people who've never done anything in the real world. And they're sitting in a room and they're saying, what can we offer them to get them excited? Somebody says, I know, we can give them all $20,000. Well, I mean, it's, they used to try to buy your vote like, what, $5, or they used to give you a bottle of bourbon. I mean, in the great age of American machine politics, there were rewards. But the idea you just randomly say, hi, everybody who'd like $20,000, please vote for me, is pretty close to insane.
Do you think that this issue of young black men in particular, even young black Hispanics, is this a candidate phenomena, right? So she's bad, Trump is somewhat appealing, or is this a cultural and ideological shift that Republicans will benefit from post-Trump, right? So there's a difference between them shifting and will benefit from it, and this being a one election phenomena because she's horrible and Trump's somewhat appealing.
Well, I think the high watermark of black support for a Democratic nominee was Barack Obama.
Yeah.
It dropped significantly, I think almost 20 points when Hillary became the nominee. It dropped again, not as much, but it dropped again from Hillary's numbers when Biden became the nominee. And it's now dropped again. I think the practical reason is simple. You raise people's cost of living. They go to the grocery store and they're reminded every week that you failed. They go buy gasoline and reminded you failed. They live in a neighborhood that is dangerous and people get shot. They realize that there are millions and millions of illegal immigrants who are now both in some cases physically dangerous and in other cases are going to take your job. And the party that's doing all that to you is saying, well, you should blindly vote for us anyway. And I think the thing that's fascinating is younger black males, not all of them, but a significant minority, now genuinely identify with Trump.
How to vote?
Yeah.
Who you voting for?
Trump.
Come on, bro. Harris does backwards, bro.
What?
Harris.
Man, we not voting for that, man. We voted for Trump, man.
And I think the break point was when they took the picture of him at the Fulton County Courthouse. Because I know that there are black barbershops that have that picture up on the wall. And it was sort of like, the man is after him too. We have something in common. We both have trouble with the police. And all of a sudden, Trump became, plus he's such an alpha male that if you're a young guy who's sick of being bullied by women, and that's the other problem that Obama was getting into, is that he was making an argument that you really shouldn't vote against a woman because women have done all these things for you. Well, as a general rule, 23-year-old males of any background, no matter what their race, aren't particularly big on being told that they should be grateful to and subservient to females. It's to tread into dangerous water. It's sort of a biological thing.
I would argue that teenagers and 23-year-old men don't want to be told by anybody what to do.
Right.
At least as a father, I can tell you that they don't care what your gender is. They just don't want to be told what to do. The other thing that's fascinating to me about this cycle is when I first came in contact with you in the 94 cycle, right, we would send surrogates out. This is no new phenomenon, right? You send surrogates out to campaign for key folks. This cycle, I've been amazed. You have Kamala Harris. She would be the first female president. She'd be the first female black. I mean, blah, blah, blah. Where's Joe Biden? Where's Gavin Newsom been? I would have thought that all of these people would be excited for the Democratic Party. I gotta believe that to some degree I mean, the only conclusion I can draw is they actually don't maybe want her to win.
Well, I think there are two parts to that. I think in Biden's case, I concluded about 10 days ago that he and Jill have reached a conclusion that it would be kind of neat if he was the only person ever to beat Trump.
Yep.
And I think that part of that was driven by the reality that one of the knives that was stuck in his back was Kamala Harris. The other knife that was stuck in his back, of course, was Nancy Pelosi. And I think people are kidding themselves if they think that Biden is not capable of being petty and mean and getting even. So it really hit me because there were like 5 days in a row where he was doing something to screw up her campaign. And I don't think that that's an accident. So I think for the other guys, it is sort of like they're going to go through the motions. But, if she happened to lose and then 28 was available and they'd all like to run for president, I mean, from Shapiro to Whitman to Whitmer to Newsom, you have at least 8 or 10 Democrats who think they should be president. And if she wins, it makes it harder. It makes it almost impossible for a Democrat to win in 28. On the other hand, if she loses, their presumption is that Trump will make it much easier for a Democrat to win in 28, and they would like to be that Democrat. So I think that's part of it. And then the other part is, how do you help somebody who's this incoherent? I mean, you have no idea what tomorrow's news is going to be because she has no idea what tomorrow's news is going to be.
I think you're right on the 2028 piece. I think that these guys are like, she's flawed. This wasn't the plan. So fine, we'll let her run. She'll lose, and then it's our turn. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Hit the subscribe and notification button. Put it on your calendar to join us for Election Day. And next week, we've got a bunch of great guests lined up. Plus, Jim McLaughlin, the president's pollster, joins us on Monday. Road to 270, the final edition on Wednesday. All sorts of amazing stuff. Hit that notification button, subscribe. I'll see you on Monday for the morning meeting, and then back at 6 with Jim McLaughlin, the president's pollster. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.